I'm Tom DeWeese, President of the American Policy Center, and this is a special presentation of Catching Fire News. Our nation stands ready to celebrate the 250th anniversary of its creation. July 4th was certainly an historic day for this nation. But I want to share with you how special and historic it turned out to be for my personal family, the DeWeese family. First, some history on how the events leading to that historic day began. On June 7th, 1776, Continental Congress delegate Richard Henry Lee from Virginia rose from his seat with a purpose that would result in revolt from the most powerful nation in the world. He said, quote, "Resolved that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved." The delegates of the Congress knew the proposal was treason, and that could lead to a rope. But on June 11th, they moved forward to create a committee to draft Lee's ideas into an official presentation to be considered for further action. John Adams, Ben Franklin, Roger Sherman, Robert Livingston, and Thomas Jefferson were appointed as that committee. And Thomas Jefferson was the best writer in the group and was assigned the task of writing the draft for the document that would not only list the colony's grievances against King George, but also lay the philosophical foundation of American independence. Jefferson's Declaration of Independence was approved by the Continental Congress on July 4th. Now, how to tell the American people what the Congress had just committed them to? Well, on July 6th, the Congress's Committee on Safety passed a resolution that said, quote, "Resolved that the Sheriff of Philadelphia read or cause to be read and proclaimed at the State House in the city of Philadelphia the Declaration of the Representatives of the United Colonies of America." That was to be the very first public reading of the Declaration of Independence. John Adams delivered that order to the High Sheriff of Philadelphia. His name was William DeWeese Sr. He was my ancestor. So, shortly after 12 noon on July 8th, at the State House yard, as it began to fill, Sheriff DeWeese arrived and climbed onto the platform. He was followed by his acting deputy, Colonel John Nixon. As Sheriff DeWeese approached the railing and prepared to speak, the crowd grew quiet in anticipation. Said Sheriff DeWeese, quote, "Under the authority of the Continental Congress and by order of the Committee of Safety, I proclaim a Declaration of Independence." Sheriff DeWeese had decided not to be the one to read the declaration, instead giving that honor to Colonel Nixon. Well, today, on this July 4th, 2026, in celebration of that incredible day, I have decided to follow in my ancestors' historic footsteps and present a public reading of the Declaration of Independence. However, since I don't have a Colonel Nixon to rely on, I will read it myself, as Sheriff DeWeese could have done. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separate. We hold these truths in self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless these people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such disillusions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for their purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of land. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, such as for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them for a mock trial, from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting a large army of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, dissolution, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas, to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity. We have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and consequences. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and to consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, and General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions to do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. And that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. The people listened attentively to the reading. When it was finished, They demonstrated their approval with 3 hearty huzzas. Throughout the city of Philadelphia, the king's arms, his symbol of authority, were removed from public buildings and that night were placed on a pile of casks and burned as the crowd watched and cheered. All through the night, the bells of churches tolled, reminding the people they had been witnessed to the beginning of a new era of American history. After that first public reading, the Declaration was sent across the country to be read in every community. George Washington had it read to his troops. Only a few months later, George Washington brought his troops to Valley Forge to be trained and strengthened for the coming battles with the British Army. At Valley Forge, Washington established his headquarters on land connected to the home of William DeWeese Sr., son of the Sheriff of Philadelphia. One of the soldiers serving in his army stationed at Valley Forge was the Reverend Joshua DeWeese, my great-great-great-grandfather. Today, as we celebrate this historic day that established America as the symbol of freedom, those revolutionary liberties so well defined by the pen of Thomas Jefferson continue to be threatened by tyrannical forces determined to rule mankind. That's why I have dedicated my life to defend and fight to preserve those freedoms, just as my ancestors, the DeWeese family, did. So today, I honor them and wish a hearty, historic, happy birthday, America, and to the Republic for which it stands. Thank you. Thank you for watching Catching Fire News. I'm Tom DeWeese, president of the American Policy Foundation. Catching Fire News is a project of APF. If you would like to help us build Catching Fire News, there are 2 ways to do that. First, go to our website at catchingfirenews.com and provide your email address. You will then be one of the very first to receive every program as it's released. And please share those programs with your friends. Second, we need your financial support to keep these programs coming. Again, you can donate at the Catching Fire News website, and it will go to the American Policy Foundation. American Policy Foundation is a 501c3 organization, so your donations to APF are completely tax deductible. Please help us. I appreciate it. Thank you.